Hello, and welcome back to the Nourish with Purpose podcast. It's Bailey, and I hope you're having a great Wednesday or whenever you're listening to today's episode. I'm really hoping that this episode doesn't get me canceled because this is something I have been wanting to talk about for a long time. And truthfully, there's not much to cancel me from, right? But I really just feel like a little tough love is not a bad thing sometimes. And that's what I hope to just nudge on you a little bit. And nothing that I share is ever me standing up here preaching to you, saying that you need to do all these things because I'm perfect. By no means is that the case. And I hope that that is never conveyed because there are so many things that I need to work on. And even as I'm working with clients, I'm recommending things and I'm like reminded myself, oh yeah, like you should also be taking your supplements consistently because you're postpartum and depleted. And you should also be eating more calories and eating more protein and moving your body. And there's just so many times, and I would say probably the biggest one for me is stress and even just my mindset and my beliefs. That is a big one that I really have to, it doesn't come naturally, I guess, to me to not be stressed. And so, or to just make myself stressed for no reason. So there are so many times that I am convicted myself as to what I need to be doing to better support my body. So please know that nothing I talk about is ever me talking down to you. There are so many things that I also need to be better about. So we're going to get into everything with today's episode. But first I want to start with some updates because I didn't do that on 2 weeks episode. I really just jumped into it. So we're going to start kind of with what's been going on. I feel like over the last month, I haven't really done like a good catch up. A big piece is Oliver got a helmet. If you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you've probably seen that. It is not because the kid has laid on his back his entire life, and not that I need to, speak onto this, but it is because for 2 months, months 2 to 4, he slept for about 8 to 9 hours straight every night until he hit 4 months, and then he had a sleep regression. But he would lay on the same side, and I have photos taking him home from the hospital of his head kind of kinked to, I believe, the right side, and that's just how he slept. That's how he's been comfortable. I'm sure that's how he was in the womb. And so that is just how his body leans, I guess. So anyway, I've been taking him to the chiropractor and was hoping we could get some things worked out with tightness on that right side, which is why his body is leaning that way. And we're still going to the chiropractor, but we did get him a helmet just because it's flat. And I think it's gotten better, and maybe I'm just convincing myself of that. But they're thinking I'll have it on for 4 to 6 months, depending on how quickly he grows. So it's not because the kid lays on his back, because he loves to be held. If I could carry him everywhere without my arms falling off, he would love that. And now he's 18 pounds, so he's a big boy. But the last 2 weeks, now 3 weeks, he got hand, foot, and mouth. And then he got impetigo. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. And that's just little spots that it's bacteria on the skin that gets, especially with hand, foot, and mouth. I'd ask the doctor, I'm like, what kind of causes this? What do you think? And with hand, foot, and mouth, you have open spots on your body. So it's easier for bacteria to enter into that little, scab, whatever. And that's a really disgusting word, by the way, scab. Anyway, bacteria can enter into that piece of your body, and then it can cause other infections. He also has had an eczema patch on his arm. And so anyway, I knew there was many points of entry that bacteria could have had. And he just happened to get that right after hand, foot, and mouth. So we've kind of had 3 weeks of isolation and just keeping him, I don't know, he had a fever for hand, foot, and mouth for probably 4 days. We had him on a cleaner brand of Tylenol to reduce his fever, and then that worked really well, but he had to consistently be on that for about 4 days, and he was fine. He was happy, he was playing, most things were pretty normal, but he just, I just felt bad for him. And that was kind of my reminder and something that I've had to continue to tell myself too. With hand, foot, and mouth, we knew he was exposed, so we knew what that was. But even with impetigo, it's impetigo. Now I'm second guessing myself, but I took him into the hospital after trying a bunch of different holistic treatments, and and different ways to kind of clear the area or clean the area and make sure that, the infection didn't get worse. But sometimes you just have to go to the hospital, and that was just my reminder. And I'm not anti going to the hospital. I want you to know that. It's just if I can, do something at home to take care of it for a couple days, and if it doesn't get better, then we go to the doctor. And that's what I have to remind myself of. And I think, sometimes with what I do, it can be that misconception of like we are anti-hospital, anti-going to the doctor. That is not the case. I just have some ways that I like to take care of things at home first. If that doesn't work, obviously, like we are so lucky to have that as an option, right? For that to even be an option is incredible. And so I felt really good about taking him in, and the cream that they gave him works like magic. It's like a stronger form of Neosporin. Anyway, so it's cleared up within like 2 to 3 days. And so I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so grateful for that medicine and the ability for his body to heal. I mean, babies are so resilient. Humans are he's a human too, but adults are so resilient. And so we're on the up and up from that. But that was like 3 weeks of just poor little guy's arm looked terrible. But luckily everything has gotten so much better. Aside of this, I've been really trying to prioritize daily walks, especially on Mondays and Tuesdays. Oliver goes to my aunt's house because she watches him while I'm working. And so then when I go pick him up around noon, I try to have lunch already, and then we go for a walk in town. If that doesn't happen, we try to go in the evenings if I don't have client calls, which this week I have client calls every day but Friday. So my evenings are full, so that's why I'm trying to prioritize kind of that midday walk when I'm able to get out with him, or even getting out in the morning because the mornings are just so crisp and the weather is just perfect right now. But Oliver and I are just really trying to find that routine. And I think we've kind of gotten it down. My husband has been really helpful with the evening routine. Like for me with him, I would just like roll into putting him down to bed. But we've really tried to like put on his pajamas, put him in his sleep sack, read him a book, then put him to bed. And I feel like that's been helpful, especially because it's getting dark so much earlier now that all of our bedtimes are a lot earlier, which they were early already. Like 10 o'clock was late to me, but now it's like 9 o'clock. And so that's been nice. But even just the day-to-day routine of getting up and playing and going for a walk, and then I'll work out and Oliver will play and watch me, I guess. And sometimes I'll do a little work during his nap time. But that is something about me as a mom is I am very organized and structured when it comes to really anything else, but not when it comes to his routine. I just can't get myself to be that rigid. And part of that is because I think I know he knows his body better than I do. He knows when he's hungry. He knows when he needs to sleep. I can tell by him rubbing his eyes. I can tell by a certain cry that he's hungry. And I've really just leaned into understanding his cues for sleep, for hunger, for whatever else, And so he really doesn't cry unless it's one of those two. Like if he's tired, he'll cry. And if he's hungry, he cries. Otherwise, like the kid is so content. And I think a lot of that, and I think every kid is different. This is not me projecting parenting advice, but I think every kid is different. But for him, I think having just not a schedule that's super rigid, having more of, just a relaxed schedule, I guess is what I'm trying to say, has been really good for him because he can just go with the flow. There are some days where I take him to the chiropractor, which is an hour drive, and then an hour drive home. And if I would have a rigid morning nap time, that wouldn't happen. And then maybe we'll stop and see some friends when we're in Lincoln, and then he gets to socialize and be with them. Or maybe he's asleep and he knows when he's asleep. I just think with what I do, there is so much car time. And so he sleeps when he's in the car. So if I was to have a rigid nap time, I just don't think that would happen. So for us, it just makes the most sense. But that doesn't mean that we can't have any structure, right? Or any routine. And so that's why on my Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays, when I'm not working in the morning, but I'm working in the evenings, we try to find ways to fill our day that are just consistent. And I think a piece of that too is I'm consistently trying to socialize, to see somebody during the week. I think it can get really easy to be at home, to not see anyone, to just be in our day-to-day routine. But I'm talking to a baby all day, and that is fine. I love it. But at the same time, like having adult conversation is nice. So If I go to town for a walk, maybe I'll meet a friend for a walk, or I'll go to my grandma's and I have a project. I want to sew Oliver some little like pants. I don't know. It's a very easy pattern to follow. And so I'll take him to my grandma's when I go do that, or we'll just stop by there, or we'll go to Grand Island to go get some groceries. Like, there are just so many ways that we try to see people. And I think it's good for him too. It's good for us to get outside of the house. He's much, much happier when we are not home all day. And now I realize I've just rambled about my son forever and ever. And maybe you don't care, but nonetheless, that is kind of that's the biggest piece of my life right now. So I just think, I have a mix of people listening, probably some people that are moms or new moms, or they are, maybe you're in college and you strive to have a family one day, or whatever phase of life you're at. I do think it's interesting, even if it wasn't me talking about my own child, just to hear other people's routines, right? To get a glimpse into somebody else's life and what they're doing. Other things that we've been enjoying is I'm really trying to prioritize the fall weather. And like I said, get outside for walks, or we did some yard work and tore up my garden, which it was so embarrassing. You guys, you have no idea how embarrassing my garden was this year. That's fine. Every year I am learning, and that is what I remind myself. Every year I'm learning what to do and what not to do. What not to do is to leave a lot of area for weeds to grow by doing things like watermelon or wildflowers. You need more structured plants in at least where we live. Otherwise, the weeds are going to go crazy. So anyway, that's what I'm learning with that. But also, like this weekend, I'm going to junk stock. On Friday, I'm meeting a friend for supper. On Sunday, I have a baby shower. And then the next weekend, I'm going to junk stock again. And junk stock, I guess if you're not from Nebraska, it's like there's a bunch of booths, like people set up. It's a huge, huge deal. There's like vendors for food or clothing or antiques or ceramics or flowers or artwork, jewelry. It's just, there's a ton of stuff. And it's always so fun. They also have like food trucks there, so you can get some different food options and drinks, and just, it's a really good time. So anyway, I'm going with a friend on Saturday after I work in the morning, and then we're going the next Sunday. So just trying to add fall activities into my weekend. Also maybe going to some football games or tailgates on the weekends, just ways to make fall feel like fall, because this is the peak time in Nebraska. I would say end of August until mid-November is just the best. And I wish that I lived somewhere where that was our season all year round, because it's just the best weather. It's a little gloomy, not super sunny all the time, but it's just a great time. So if you're ever, which you never, if you're not from Nebraska, probably will want to visit Nebraska. I don't hate living here, but it's just not a huge an attraction site, I guess. It's in the middle of the US, but coming around the fall time is the best. And that's something that I've really recognized this year is the town we live close to, what our address is such a tiny little cute town, which Nathan and I, we go for walks in the evenings and we're like, the town is basically dead in the evenings. But on a Saturday morning, there's a coffee shop, and like 2 weekends ago, they had a fall market. So they had pumpkins and a candle vendor, and we had our coffee and fall drinks and things like that just like brought so much life. And having pumpkins sold outside, like it was just so cute. And it is kind of like a little Hallmark-esque town on certain days of the week. Some days there's nothing going on, but other times like it just feels so cute, and that's just fun, right? Like just having fun fall-themed activities or events to go to just like is a highlight, I would say, of the fall for me. Other things that I've been up to, I've really been doing a lot of HTMA consultations, which is the hair tissue mineral analysis. I think 2 episodes I did I kind of shared with you my protocol and my assessment for HTMA, because it is something that some people have never heard anything of, but it's literally a hair sample. You take a few snippets of the scalp, the hair at the closest to your scalp, the root, I guess, of your hair. And you send it into a lab and you get 2 to 3 months worth of information, obviously based off of like how fast your hair would grow would be 3 months. If it grows super slow, probably 2 months. And from there, you can see mineral deficiencies, you can see vitamin deficiencies, you can see your metabolic type, which really helps you also identify what foods you need more of and should reduce. And it's never is anything long term, but for short term, I've realized that there does need to be some rigidness when it comes to taking care of yourself. And I don't think we always want to hear that, which is kind of where the thought to talk about toxic softness, which Nathan was like, what is that? I'm like, it's just people have gotten too soft and have too much grace for themselves. And I never thought I would say that, because that is not the approach that I take to coaching, is very rigid, in your face, aggressive. That is not me, and hopefully you can tell that. But I do think there is a level of structure and a level of discipline that we need to come back to in order to thrive as a society and to thrive individually. And not everybody wants to hear that, and not everybody wants to implement that, and that's fine. But there are a lot of things happening within society now as a result of that. And so I'm going to dive into that obviously here in a second, but just that reminder that it is okay to have seasons of rigidness. Like, that is not a bad thing. We as humans function well with structure. Most of us function well with structure. And now I just told you my whole lack of structure with my son, but that will not be forever. Right now he's 6 months old, so he does not have a very structured routine. Eventually we will get there. But again, we thrive typically in structure, and I do think that is a good thing. And so I'm going to address that. But that is what I've realized, like I said, with HTMA, is there are periods of time where I'm telling people you need to reduce the carbs, you need to reduce the caffeine, you need to reduce the sugar. And I'm not saying you have to reduce it and neglect it, and not even neglect it, but reduce it and completely deprive yourself of it. We're just being aware. Be aware of your consumption of it. And when you're aware, and when you have a goal in mind, and when the symptoms that you're presenting are a result of you consuming too much sugar, consuming too much caffeine, that should be your wake-up call, that it's time to reduce both of them, right? And so that is just really what that's teaching me. And I've gone in ebbs and flows of my business where I think I was like, you need to have grace for yourselves. It's okay if you can't move your body. Like, you're so busy. And I don't think that's helping anyone, truthfully. Like, I look back in seasons, I'm like, was I really helping anyone? Because I was just validating them not doing things, right? And although, yes, in seasons of life, it's a lot more difficult and it requires a lot more discipline, for lack of better words. But I think back, I'm like, I don't think I was helping. Like, I was not being the person that they needed to tell them that they need to start moving their body, or this symptom is going to get worse, or they need to be serious about removing gluten because their body cannot break it down efficiently and it is causing their gallbladder issues, or whatever the cause is, right? Like, there are instances I think back to and I'm like, I could have been more rigid. I could have been less soft. And I think that is how I'm trying to approach working with clients now. And it's not with lack of understanding that life can be busy, and understanding that giving up things can be really difficult, or that some people struggle with disordered eating or have in the past. And so if a protocol ever pushes you to have disordered habits, I think that is way, way, way too far. But I don't think it's bad for a protocol to push you to set some boundaries and to have some discipline with yourself. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I say that because that's what I'm learning about myself, truthfully. Like, I'm trying to reduce the sugar based off of my metabolic type. I don't really metabolize sugar well. My blood sugar tends to be on the lower side. So I need more carbohydrates, but I don't necessarily need more sugar. And I have switched to do natural sweeteners. We do maple syrup, we do coconut sugar, and that's the extent of it, really, or coconut syrup. But I also noticed there are some evenings where I'm like, want 2 or 3 no-bake cookies. It's like, okay, but do you really need that? Like yesterday night, I told Nathan, I'm like, I just want a cookie so bad. And he's like, why don't you just eat what you're hungry for? And I'm like, you're so right, but I can have 1. I don't need to have 3, or I don't need to have 2, or I don't need to make cookies because I'm feeling really sad. I maybe just need to go out for a walk and take some deep breaths, right? And so it's, what do you gravitate towards when you're having those extreme emotions? And Again, never getting to the point where it becomes disordered, but having discipline isn't a bad thing. And so I'm trying to have more discipline with myself when it comes to that, or even my eating window too. So what I really tell clients for digestion, ideal optimal digestion, is allowing your body to have a period of fasting. That is not intermittent fasting. That is not fasting for 14 hours, but it's fasting for maybe 12, maybe 10 hours, giving your body time to digest and break down food, understanding that if you really, really need food late at night, you're not eating enough throughout the day. Or if you want food really late at night, maybe there's that emotional time. Maybe when you were a kid, you would have a late night bowl of cereal, which I would say would be my comfort. And that is what you gravitate towards late at night because it's comforting to you, right? Or it's just become a habit. And so for me, getting back to fasting from like 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. to just prevent some bloating. I don't really have much bloating, but like gas or all the things that we don't really like to talk about, and I probably shouldn't share because it's TMI, but things like that happen when you eat late at night. And so it can make a huge difference if you have boundaries with that, or boundaries around screen time. So I'm going to get into all of that too, but just kind of like, I guess a lot of what I'm recognizing in myself, I'm sharing with you today because I think it might be helpful. Okay, other catch-ups. I listened to a podcast episode yesterday, which I feel like I could do a whole podcast on. It was the Skinny Confidential, but they had on the guy who wrote The Anxious Generation, which is talking about phone usage. And I think he said 36 or 34 states have actually passed laws to remove phones from schools or remove phones from the classroom, and how big of a difference it's making on just like people talking to each other in the hallways, people laughing, people creating conversation and not just scrolling on their phone when they have downtime and paying attention in class. And so that was really interesting. But he also talked about the piece, like when you have a 6-month to 1-year-old, how important it is that you are not on a screen when you're with them. Because if you think about your face when you're looking on social media, it's pretty stoic, and your baby is looking to you, looking to your face, looking to your reactions to find comfort, to kind of create some understanding about what's happening in their environment. And so when you are on your phone, they can't connect with you because they connect with us through looking at like how we're responding, right? And so they can't see your eyes. They can't connect with you on that level. So they start to become very disconnected and they search for connection through other sources, right? So this is when he said, like, maybe if you notice your baby really gravitates towards mom over dad, well, think about, if dad's on his phone, scrolling his phone while he's with the baby's not going to feel connected to him. But with mom, she's talking to them, she's making eye contact and singing and removing that screen. And so he's able to get feedback, and that's how they connect. And those are things that I had heard because my mom is a teacher. So I feel like I've definitely heard about that, but I didn't really realize the impact and how crucial it was for their development at those ages. 6 months to a year to, honestly, they say 5 is kind of that not cutoff, but when they're maybe a little less impacted. But just how screens are obviously creating a disconnected society. And so it's pushed me to be a little bit more rigid, again, less soft around my boundaries with my phone. Sometimes I'm with him and I'm like, oh, like I'm so tired. I just want to like disconnect or disassociate for a while and scroll on Instagram. And if I do that, it's like, okay, well, think about the impact that's having on him. You're sitting here playing with him, but you're not really playing. You're scrolling your phone. Even if he can't see you scroll your phone, like he still feels that disconnection, or he or she. And so it was just very alarming to me. And I would encourage everyone to listen to that episode. It was just very interesting and interesting to hear the different terminology, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but around like parents who collectively decide that their kids won't have Snapchat. Or he was saying how really nobody ever should have TikTok. Like there is no need for us as a society to have TikTok, and how there are like Russian and Chinese spies that are spies. I don't know if that's the right word, but like whatever the correlation would be to like the FBI, basically in other countries that are using those apps to like gain information about people within the US. And I'm sure we're doing the same for other countries, but it's just interesting to see how much information that they are gaining from us on TikTok, or how Snapchat, how adults, like Snapchat was created for adults. It was meant to send photos, have them disappear quickly, but not be for kids who could obviously fall into temptation very quickly when they have Snapchat. And so it was just, those apps and how, like, I deleted TikTok back off my phone. I'm never really on it, but I realized, I'm like, why do I even have this here? Like, it's kind of a last resort. If I'm bored of every other platform, I go to TikTok, and I'm like, but why? Like, I don't really even need it. So I deleted TikTok, and I don't have Snapchat anyway. So it's really Instagram, but that is the one that is like my Achilles heel, because I love creating, and I love creating content and sharing content, but then you can also fall into overconsumption. So anyway, that was a very interesting podcast episode, like I said, by the Skinny Confidential. It was one of their more recent ones, so you shouldn't have any issue finding it. But talking about the anxious generation and just how our kids pick up on or don't pick up on cues because we're on our phone. Okay, so let's get into the bulk of today's episode. Again, we're talking about toxic softness, lacking boundaries, giving into temptation, and neglecting yourself. So I wanted to bring in some verses here. It is Corinthians 10, 12, and then I go into 23 and 31. I didn't really handpick these verses, but I picked the ones that I thought were the most impactful, I guess, within that Corinthians 10. But I'm not doing this just kind of like handpicked verses. I want to give you some context. So really this is, they're talking about fleeing from idol worship and demonic practices and really glorifying God within everything you do. So not giving into temptation. And if you do something that maybe wasn't the right thing to do, but you were unaware of it, that you are not found guilty, and really just bringing people to Christ through self-control, truthfully. And so here it is, verse 12, it says, So if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you do not fall. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, but when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. And that is something I have come back to time and time again. If I think back to moments of temptation in my life, probably more so like in high school, it is that piece of he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. And I have noticed that pattern. Like if I'm facing temptation, there is always an out. And when it's a temptation, obviously that is to the level where not just oh, I'm not going to eat sugar or have this cookie, but something a lot deeper than that. You will find ways out. Like if you're, underage drinking, and maybe when you decide okay, this doesn't feel right, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to go and drink with my friends. And then maybe your grandma or grandpa will be like, hey, you want to go out for supper with us? We want to take you out for ice cream afterwards. And it's oh, but I had plans already with my friends, but it doesn't really feel right to go and do that because I know that's not right morally. So then you go out with your grandparents. I've noticed just correlations like that happen. I would say not even high school. I didn't struggle with that in high school, but more so probably early college, of finding that out. And you will never be tempted beyond what you can handle. And I think that's the key piece there that I encourage you to take away. And then verse 23, it says, I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. No one should seek their own good, but the good of others. Again, you can do anything, free will, but that doesn't mean everything is beneficial. And then verse 31, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it for the glory of God. And I think when we correlate our body to a temple created by God, right, we want to treat it differently. Our body is not something to worship or to idolize, but instead something to take care of, right? And to treat our body like it means something, not just fill it with the crappiest food possible or sit on our couch and watch TV instead of getting out and volunteering and moving our body and doing all these things. But it's actually our body was created to take care of, right? You can do all these things to your body. There's no, the Lord is not going to selectively punish you for doing that, but it's not going to be beneficial, and it's not probably going to glorify God in the meantime. And so that's something that I think I've been very convicted of okay, yeah, me not eating as a form of punishment is not honoring my body, and it's not glorifying the body that God has given me to take care of. And when we think of that, we think about, structure, maybe rigidness, maybe discipline. Those are not inherently bad things, okay? when it leads to, like I was saying before, when it leads to disordered eating, when it leads to negative habits, when it leads to destructive patterns, that's when that's not a good thing. But I don't think that it is a bad thing to have discipline. Discipline is a good thing. If you think about kids need discipline. They need structure. And as parents, like that's kind of our role, is to lead them in the right way, or at least do what we believe is right for them so that they can grow up and be really quality adults that make good decisions and can do the same for their children, right? It's that generational impact. And I think we have to remember that, right? Discipline isn't a bad thing. So again, like I had said with HTMA results, I've noticed this in how I create meal plans and create a protocol for clients. I do have some structure and I do have discipline that's required for you. And I think if you're entering into any season of wanting to take care of yourself, you should expect there to be discipline, because you can't just keep doing what you're doing and continue to feel the same way. Or I guess you can't keep doing what you're doing and continue to feel any better, is what I'm trying to say. It's not possible. Unless a miracle happens within you, you cannot continue to eat really inflammatory foods or eat foods that cause inflammation within your body, but not experience back pain. Like I just, I think that, or not even the food piece, but build muscle, right? At some point you have to recognize, like, this area of my body is really, really weak. I need to strengthen it. How can I strengthen it? Good food, building muscle, moving my body, reducing stress. All these things that are like, yeah, we've heard that so many times, but are you actually implementing it? And are you implementing it with discipline? And that is something I have shared, and I feel like my family has this conversation a lot, is not everybody, a lot of people claim they want to lose weight, right? And we live in a society where there is now an opportunity to lose weight really quickly with not doing much, okay? And I'm not going to touch on that because that is obviously your own decision, and I'm not going to criticize you for doing that if that's what you've chosen to do. I think there is a time and place. But when it comes down to wanting to lose weight, but it looks like eating less fast food, it looks like maybe even eating more and eating more protein, it looks like getting up and moving throughout your day, it looks like waking up early and exercising and strength training, and it looks like setting boundaries around relationships that are not healthy and taking that time instead to focus on pouring into your community. Like, there are so many layers of weight loss that, it all just kind of works together. But a lot of people, if I would tell people what I've had to do to lose weight in the past, people would not want to do it. And not even in my unhealthy season, but in a healthier season of life, what I did to lose weight, not a lot of people would want to do that. And I'm not here saying like, yeah, I'm the standard, you need to do what I'm doing. That is not what I mean by that, but it just means that it takes discipline. My dad is somebody, which there might be faults, which I've told him before, I'm like, you're working out a little too much, but he has taught me the discipline of exercise. And that is something I'm so, so grateful for. And my mom too, like, she moves her body regularly. And a lot of people don't want to have discipline around exercise, which is actually interesting because that's why I stopped doing personal training and why I stopped actually working with people when it comes to exercise, because I'm like, nobody wants to do it. And nobody is a very generalized claim, but a lot of people don't want to do it. And so it's a lot easier to talk to people about how they could eat because everybody has to eat at least 3 times a day. Not everybody has to exercise, right? You're not going to die if you don't exercise. Maybe not right away, right? It might be more of that compounding piece, but with food, you have to drink water, you have to eat food, or you will not live. And so that is actually why I made that shift, because I just realized, like, most people don't want to do that. And that's not to say that people are generally lazy. I think there's just a lack of like, where does this fit in, right? Which is why I'm going to give you takeaways too at the end of today's episode of like, how can I create a good routine so that I can prioritize the things that I want to do? Because maybe right now you're in a season where it does not feel possible to exercise. And that's not saying everybody needs to exercise either. If your health is at a state where you are struggling to even eat enough, like, no, that's not the next step for you. The next step for you is not to add in an intense exercise plan. Maybe for you, it looks like just eating enough for breakfast. 1 meal of the day, eat enough food, nourish your body well, drink enough water, right? The foundational pieces of taking care of yourself, which that in itself, I have a whole program. It's self-paced called the foundations for that reason specifically, is a lot of people aren't doing the foundations. And then, yeah, of course you don't want to have an exercise plan or program because it's hard to even eat 3 meals a day, set boundaries, and drink enough water, or to get to bed at a decent time. So like there are other pieces that should be priority. I'm not just saying exercise is number one, but I'm just saying that to imply like if you want to have discipline, you have to start each day with discipline. In this too, I think we've just shifted as a society to have too much grace for ourselves, right? Oh, just have grace for yourself. And like I said, I've coached that way in the past, and not that clients didn't see results, but I don't think I was the best coach because I was giving people too much grace. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have that for ourselves. There are so many instances where, have grace for yourself. And I will say that often. But sometimes we need discipline. And we need to stop accepting how we feel because it feels like too much work to make it a priority to actually take care of ourselves or to see change. One statistic here that just like blew my mind is that 12% of the population in America is metabolically healthy. 1 in 8 people. And that is not even saying that's overweight people. You can be thin and metabolically unhealthy. You can have insulin resistance and be underweight, right? There are instances where it's not just overweight and underweight or people that are overweight or metabolically unhealthy. It can be a lot of different body types. But the fact that 12% of the population is metabolically healthy is very, very concerning to me. And that shows me that we have fallen into that toxic softness, giving ourselves too much grace where we've actually dropped any expectation we had for ourselves. And I know that's being really, really blunt. But I really encourage you, again, ask yourself, like, what is the primary cause for me not eating well or not moving my body or not setting boundaries or not drinking enough water or not getting X, Y, Z done each day? Like for me, what is the primary cause for me scrolling on my phone too much? I have a lack of boundaries around when I'm on it, right? That is why I then don't maybe think I have time to read. Maybe I don't think I have time to get work done. I don't think I have time to go for a walk because guess what? I just spent 20 minutes scrolling my phone on the toilet. Like, those are times when you could be doing a 10-minute workout. You could be going for a 10-minute walk. You, as in me. There are instances in my own life I see that, right? And so it doesn't just mean like, oh, you aren't doing anything or you're lazy, but instead, what is filling the time that you could be spending towards taking care of yourself? And I think that is the first question we have to ask ourselves before we even go any further. What is taking up all my time? Because if you claim you don't have time, I think that is maybe a lack of routine, a lack of structure, or you're overdoing it in one area. Okay? Exercise or consistent movement. This is another piece, right? It's really easy to make that excuse as to why it doesn't happen if you, again, spend time scrolling on Facebook or listening to a podcast and sitting on your couch or watching a Netflix series. Not things that are bad. Those are not bad things, but when done in overabundance, it's preventing you from actually doing what your body needs and what your body craves, and that is movement. We are created to be humans that move, objects that move. When you move, it becomes a lot easier to stay moving. An object in motion stays in motion. That's just how it is. In movement too, it doesn't need to look like having, I need to get, maybe you've been doing nothing, which is fine. But maybe you're like, okay, but I really want to get to the gym. I'm going to start going 6 days a week for an hour. I'm going to tell you, no. That's not the right way to do it, because you can't go from 0 to 100. That is where you have grace with yourself and understand that starting small isn't a bad thing. Maybe 2 days a week, you're going to go to the gym for 20 minutes. And then the next month, you're going to add 3 days a week for 20 minutes. And then 4 days a week the next month for 20 minutes. And then once you get to 5 days a week, you start increasing your time at the gym. Maybe your work schedule doesn't allow for you to have an hour at the gym. So instead, you notice you've got 3 10-minute increments in your workday. You have a mid-morning break for 10 minutes. You have a lunch break for 10 minutes. You've got an afternoon break for 10 minutes. Lunch break, obviously, hopefully should be an hour, but 10 minutes of that time, what could you do? Maybe instead you go for a walk and you create a step goal. And instead of just trying to get to the gym, if that doesn't feel doable right now, you don't have access to that, just get steps in, right? Have your goal be 10,000 steps, 8,000 steps. Any step goal that you have, I would say right now, or whatever you think the steps you're getting per day is right now, add 2,000. That's going to add about a mile per day into the movement you're already doing. Okay? What plays off of this? As a society, we crave structure. If you think about the school system, even if you like it or you don't like it, there is structure there. And I think, with my mom being a teacher, I've seen the benefit of structure, of kids having to share time talking in class, having to not have everything revolve around that one child, but instead be in a classroom with other people. But the school system is structure. And typically, I think kids do well with structure. That might be a controversial belief, but I think that's true. When they get into those older years, right? Kindergarten, I think, is a really good time to start implementing probably more structure. The work schedule, that's also structured. You go to a job every single day. Most people are going to go from 8 to 5. They're going to be at a structured job. Or even that need for beneficial, helpful morning and evening routines. I know my day is going to look way better if I'm able to have a solid morning routine and if I finish my day with a solid evening routine. It just will. Again, we function best with structure. Structure means we have to have discipline. So this also comes to the diet piece, right? Eating, nourishing your body. I do not think that being strict for a period of time when it comes to your diet is a bad thing. I think how you go about it, I would have some critiques probably with like typical diet plans. But how I'm approaching it with clients is not, here's your list of foods you cannot ever eat, and here's your list of foods that you need to eat. That's not how I do it. I say, here's the foods to prioritize, here's the foods to eat in moderation, and here's the foods to limit. The verbiage in itself is so much better because it's not saying, okay, you had, crappy granola bar for breakfast and that was on your limit section, right? That's not saying you're a failure. It just says limit. So if that's what you had for breakfast, let's think about what you're eating the rest of the day and try to prioritize the foods that I'm telling you to prioritize for the rest of the day. Does not mean that you can fall off the wagon. It's not possible because it's just a continuous journey. And typically nothing like this is long-term unless it's helping you in something that you decide to implement long-term. Like for me, eating whole foods, minimally processed foods, reducing high fructose corn syrup, canola oils, all the things, like that is something I've stuck with long-term. Once I started noticing my skin clear up, I started noticing I didn't have digestive issues. When I started noticing my chronic back pain got a lot better when I prioritized eating good food. And because I've noticed that, I've stuck with that. And I don't think that hurts anybody to stick with those things. But depending on your metabolic type, maybe you don't do well with carbs. So we need to reduce any forms of gluten, or for thyroid, we need to reduce any form of gluten for 45 days. And I want to see how your body responds when it comes to, typically if we look at blood work, it'd be about 4 months, or HTMA 3 months. And I want to see how your body's responding. Doesn't mean that is something you need to do forever. If your body's not changing at all and you've been really rigid with it, you've been disciplined with it, then that's something, maybe there's something else going on. Same like with me and dairy. I do raw dairy, but I've really had to have that be a food that I eat in moderation. Even though with raw dairy, I don't feel bad if I eat a lot of it. I know that it helps with, or it creates mucus within my body. So I'll notice I'm more snotty or I have drainage in my throat. If I'm sick, it kind of amplifies those symptoms. So I need to just back off on the dairy a little. The caffeine is a huge one too. That was the biggest one for me postpartum. Postpartum, I was like, oh, I understand why women, think that they're living off coffee, especially if they have kids, or the clients I'd work with where they would have 4 cups of coffee but skip breakfast. I'm like, I kind of get it. Like, you do feel depleted, but coffee is fueling depletion. And when I realized that, postpartum, my body's under too much stress to be doing the caffeine, I feel, I'm not kidding you, night and day different, but that is discipline that I didn't want to have. I didn't want to do decaf coffee, which I know still has small amounts of caffeine, but I'm like, no, I love my coffee in the morning and it gives me energy. But I was realized it was making me very anxious, very stressed. Like my heart was racing. It wasn't good, especially now that I've added, like if I've tried to add it back in, I'll do like one day. I can think back like probably 3 weeks ago that I did it, and I just felt terrible. My mind was racing. It wasn't good. So again, discipline. And that's not to say forever and ever and ever that I'll have to reduce the caffeine or not do any caffeine, but I'm aware of it, and I know that that's something that doesn't make me feel good, so I'm not going to do it. And you have to kind of feel the benefit. I think like there's that season of discipline where maybe you don't even notice the benefit of what you're doing, and then you kind of go over the hill and you realize like, whoa, okay, I've been not doing these things and I feel way, way better. You have to give yourself time. I say at least probably 45 days. Give yourself time. Be disciplined. Be strict with yourself. See the benefit of what you're doing. And then you want to be consistent with it. It becomes a habit. It's not necessarily even discipline anymore. It's habit. And so I think like with sugar, alcohol, caffeine, and dairy, that's where I see this come up most often. And again, this doesn't look like punishing yourself, but maybe, you're able to get back to enjoying something sweet one time a day instead of after every single meal, or having one coffee a day instead of throughout the day. And you start to really enjoy that time versus it just becoming something you just nonchalantly do because it's been a habit for so long. And I think, when we view food as a reward, that's when it can become a very slippery slope. It's like, well, I did really good on my exam. I'm going to treat myself to ice cream or pizza this evening. Like those are not bad foods, right? But if every time you do something well, like those are the foods you're going to reward yourself, thinking about finding a different reward, right? If you need a reward for being disciplined, maybe that looks like something that's going to help fuel the habit you're working to build. You want to be disciplined with exercise. So it looks like, okay, well, once I'm consistently at the gym 3 days a week for 2 months, I'm going to buy a workout set. And then that's again where it comes like that discipline around money. Not just buying everything you want because you saw somebody post about it, but actually having a reason. Like, I went to the gym consistently, so now I'm going to get this set that I really want to wear to the gym because I've been consistent. I don't think there's anything wrong with a reward that fuels your good habit, right? I think too, HTMA has taught me the importance of eating for your metabolic type. Some foods don't sit well with others and others people are okay with, and that's different based on the person. And also, coming back to the food piece, being on a strict or rigid diet does not mean restriction of calories. I'm actually telling most of my clients that they need to be eating more because they're under eating, and they've been under eating for a long time. And so they're noticing like, I'm gaining all of this weight, with this life change. Why is that happening? Well, because they've had years and years and years of under eating. Their metabolism is not as efficient as it should or could be. So we have to really change what they're eating, how they're eating for their metabolic type, maybe having discipline around certain foods, and then helping support their metabolism with maybe supplementation or movement, and prioritizing vitamins and minerals so that those cravings that they maybe have for something sweet or something salty aren't as intense. And I will tell you too, I see this often with moms, and this is not to shame moms or make anyone feel guilty for what your schedule looks like or how you're taking care of yourself. But kids, I think, can be used as an excuse to not do things. And there are some instances where, not possible, right? You have a newborn baby. It's a lot harder to go to the gym. You can't, right? So for me, that's looked like, well, how can I be content with exercising at home? I have a standing desk treadmill. That's the treadmill I use. And I have some dumbbells here, and I will prop Oliver up with his toy basket now that he can sit. And he will pull out all of his toys, put him back in. I'm talking to him while I'm exercising. I'm smiling at him. I've got music going. I've made it an experience for both of us. And it's not just like, okay, I need to go put him down in a separate room so I can work out, but I've added him into that. And I think the benefit of your kids seeing you take care of yourself is only going to have a positive result. They're going to take care of themselves. At least that is my hope, right? And I don't say this to brag and say I'm doing all the things right, but I think that has been something I know for myself because I feel like pretty solid with nutrition. The movement piece is something I need to do for myself. Mentally, I just need it, okay? Years and years and years of just needing it. And so that is what I need to do. And this even looked like, when I was weeks 1 through 6 postpartum, I would prop Oliver like in his little bouncer seat, and I would take out my standing desk treadmill, and right beside him, I would just be walking. I'd be talking to him, and then eventually he would fall asleep. And then I would turn on YouTube or watch something or listen to a podcast, and I would just walk. And I would walk literally in my living room on a standing desk treadmill with him sitting there. And because I knew I wouldn't get outside to walk because we live on gravel roads and he was still so little and it was colder outside. So what did I do? I made an adjustment. Was it ideal? Was it going to a gym and doing a CrossFit workout and burning 600 calories in one session that I probably would have craved doing prior to pregnancy? No, it's not that. But in this season of life, that is what movement looks like. Like I said, when I go pick up Oliver, we then go for a 3-mile walk in town because it's a way to add him into it. He loves it. He loves getting outside. And I'm just bringing my kid into my movement. And I use movement as an example just because I think that's probably the number one that most people struggle finding time for that to fit in. And so that's how I've made it work, and I make it work 5 to 6 days a week. On the weekends, my husband watches him while I do a 40-minute workout, and it works out well. So that's also that piece of asking for help, asking for support. This maybe is cooking too. You're like, well, I really struggle to make a really good lunch. Again, like we've got Oliver a high chair now that is countertop height so he can watch what I'm doing. I turn on music. I talk to him. About what I'm doing. Like, okay, now I'm cutting the peppers. Okay, we've got to put them into the pot because we're going to brown some hamburger. And it's just that communication back and forth. And you feel maybe a little crazy at first, but it's a way to invite them in. And I have some toys there for him, and he's really interested. Again, I'm not saying this to say I'm doing everything right, but those are instances that it's been really helpful to just know how I can invite him into what I'm doing. Especially because he's still only 6 months old, right? 6.5 months old. So I've talked a lot about this, right? Discipline, what that could look like, why we need it, but what do we do about it? I would say the first piece of this is to establish a solid morning and evening routine. So one habit you can do to identify like what is your routine. If you don't have a routine, I guarantee you do. It's maybe just not solid. So write down the 10 things you do every morning when you wake up and every night, 10 things you do every night before you go to bed. And it might look like I sit and watch Netflix, and then I scroll on my phone in bed before I fall asleep or until I fall asleep. And then I wake up and then I want to go get a snack from the kitchen. So I go get a snack, and it's okay if it's not your ideal morning and evening routine, but be honest with yourself and write out what it looks like. And then pick 2 ways that you can adjust both morning and evening routine. Another piece of this too is to understand what your body needs and make small, consistent changes. The number one piece, I have to say, get support. Get support if it's doing blood work, if it's doing hair tissue mineral analysis test, if it is getting a coach to work with one-on-one. I am currently taking a few more one-on-one clients right now for my one-on-one coaching program. Otherwise, blood work or HTMA, you can also transition into a one-on-one coaching experience with both of those. And I will tell you, getting support is going to be a key piece here. If it's not paying somebody to get support, then maybe having a friend, accountability partner, your husband, your sister, whoever it is, to hold you accountable. What I will say is when you are working with somebody random in your life, you might lack their discipline because they don't really benefit much from you being disciplined, right? That's where I think having a coach, it makes a difference because you're paying somebody to hold you accountable to what you said you're going to do and making sure you stick with it and giving you direction, giving you a clear path. Even if you just did HTMA to see your body type, to know what foods your body needs more of and what your body is not metabolizing well. If you have a slow metabolism or a really fast metabolism, eating is going to look a lot different for you too. So understanding your body type, your metabolic type, and then understanding deficiencies. And I'm going to share a reel on this, but this is kind of something I have had to recognize is when that piece of diet culture comes back in my brain of absolute restriction. And the example that I give is dried apricots, which I know it seems kind of silly, and Brazil nuts. But I did my HTMA. I saw that I need more potassium. Apricots are like the best source of potassium you can get. Half a cup of apricots. But the diet culture, the restriction part of my brain was like, that's empty calories. Why would you do dried fruit? That's empty calories. Because when you are in that restrictive diet culture mentality, discipline is complete avoidance. And discipline looks like only eating the things like protein, maybe some fats and carbs and fruits and veggies. But it looks like avoiding anything that would, quote, be empty calories, which is typically anything that doesn't have protein. But for me, I know potassium is like the spark plug for your metabolism. So for me, I'm like, well, I need apricots. Like my body is depleted in sodium, depleted in potassium. I need to be adding those things in. Same with thyroid function. With my metabolic type, my thyroid tends to be sluggish, which is influencing my metabolism. It's something that I see with most women that are postpartum is they're also the same metabolic type that I am. But Brazil nuts are a great way to give your body a source of selenium. But then I'm like, oh, but I hate taking my supplement like then it's oysters. So that gives me zinc, iodine, and some selenium. But it's like, but that's the discipline. You have to. Your body showed a need. You need to support the need. And that has completely altered how I view fueling my body. It is no longer looking at my body for, solely the physique appearance and the physique focus, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But it's doing what my body needs to actually function well, right? And so that looks like doing things to support metabolism, support thyroid, support adrenals, support deficiencies that I know are happening within my body, and being disciplined with it. You have to be disciplined. If you want to see the results that you might want to see, you have to have a level of discipline. Again, I share all of this with you because I need it myself, not because I'm doing everything perfect. There are a lot of gaps within my own lifestyle that need support too. But hopefully you're able to take something from today's episode. Again, take the piece of advice of what do we do about it? Look at your morning and evening routine. Make adjustments there. Understand what your body needs. Do testing, do functional testing, get support, get a friend to hold you accountable, learn your metabolic type, understand deficiencies in your body, eat accordingly. There are so many pieces that play into the larger picture, but can be really, really supportive in giving you direction. And it's much more fun to be disciplined when you know you're doing a protocol that's directly healing your body, right? If I give a client a protocol, they are going to adhere to it much more consistently. If they know within 4 months we're going to look at blood work again and I want to see what's going on in their body, how things have improved, right? It's giving you kind of that end date or that continuation date to be like, I'm doing all this because I want to see this symptom change. I'm doing all of this to see this part of my body change maybe, or my worst symptom change. And so I just think it's the coolest thing. It's the best thing. So if you want to get more information on HTMA or blood work, you can look below in the description of today's episode. It has both links there, or if you sign up for one-on-one coaching, we do them both anyway. So there's a lot of different options, or if you're confused or have questions, you can always message me at Nourish with Bailey on Instagram, or my email is also in the description of today's episode. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and close today's episode in prayer. So dear Lord, just thank you so much for today. Thank you for whoever is listening to today's episode. And I just pray that they honor and take care of their body well, that they nourish and move the temple that you've given them to take care of, and that they are just a good steward in their own body, and that they just advocate for their health and they prioritize taking care of themselves. Lord, I pray for discipline and all the areas that we might be struggling to have discipline, and that you bring clarity to what those areas are and give us direction and guidance in creating some discipline around them, to not just be hard on ourselves, right, but to actually take care of ourselves well. And I just thank you for this season of life and the weather you've gifted us with. And I just pray for safety in whoever's listening. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. So with that, I will talk to you again next Wednesday. Bye.